𝗵𝗡𝗶𝗿 and Smart Asset, two groups, did a study recently, and in the past 2 years, the #1 state in the entire nation for losing retirees, people moving out, is California. In this video, I'm going to show you and walk you through some of the reasons people are leaving and some of the real cautionary things you need to be aware of as you make a move, so that you don't make a move and instead of living in Texas or Tennessee or Florida or some of the other popular places, you live in regret. So why do people want to move? Number one, the #1 reason is it's a lower cost of living. Right behind a lower cost of living, as far as reasons people are moving out of California, is the taxes. The taxes are unbelievable in California, and they are. You always have federal income tax. You can't get away from that anywhere if you live in the United States. But there are some states that have no personal income tax. All states that I know of, except for maybe one, has a sales tax on anything that's bought. So in California, we get the privilege of having all three. We have federal tax, we have state income tax, and we have sales tax. So there are other places you can go, and the tax burden at least appears to be lower. Now, I want to caution you on something here, and so you need to stay tuned when I get into some of the real cautionary things. When we get back to taxes in a few minutes, you're going to really see there's some things you need to consider on the tax realm and in the tax silo to make sure that you're not making a mistake with the tax situation. The third most popular reason for people leaving their state and moving to some of the real popular states, at least on the list, and it might not qualify for us in California, is people say, I want to move to a place where there's better climate. A fourth reason that people give me when they say we want to get out of California is they say, we want to move to where our kids are, particularly when your kids start having grandbabies, because you want to be close as much as you can to those grandbabies and be a part of their life as they're growing up. I've got 8 grandchildren, and 2 of them I'm very close to because they live within 2 miles of my house. I understand being close to your grandchildren. Guess which 2 are in our house every single Friday? We watch them on Friday. We have dinner usually with them on Friday. We watch them on the weekends when our kids have things to do. So being close to family is a really good reason to consider moving. However, there's a cautionary story or 2 or 10 here where I've had so many people there. I'm thinking right now of a particular lady who was a client, and she lived close to me in where I live in Placentia. And she moved to Minnesota so she could be close to her children. And she told me, I said, why are you moving up there, Rhonda? And she said, well, I was up there for 2 weeks. It was just wonderful. And they took a vacation and we spent 2 weeks at the lake. I'm going to go back and live at the lake. I mean, when I was there, I got on the boat. I rode the inner tube on the lake. I mean, I had a great time. And it is such a telling story, because about 6 months later, she came back and she says several things. I moved to the lake house, and it's 75 miles from where my kids live. She says, I never see them. She says, and that lake house, being 75 miles north of Minneapolis, is frozen. The lake is frozen in the winter. There's no boat. There's no riding the inner tube. There's none of that stuff in the winter. And 2 months after I moved here, my children got transferred to Dallas. Okay, so a real life story that I've seen multiple times. Be careful about just moving somewhere to be close to your children. Make sure if you move somewhere, you like that area too. That's an area that you want to live in as well, not just so you can be close to the children, unless, of course, there's some kind of health reason, and that child is the one that's going to take care of you as you age, get older, and really need that care. So let's put all these together. A lower cost of living, tax benefits, a better climate, close to family. Okay, other things that you might add in. And so you say, it's just going to be a better quality of life. I get it. Nobody ever moves from California and says, we're moving over there because we're going to have a horrible life there. Everybody that moves has the intention that things are going to get better over there for this reason, taxes or lower cost of living or all the things that we've named, or even some that you might add in. Just be careful. Make sure you're taking into account everything, and the reason that you are moving is probably more than one reason. It's a valid reason. And look also at the negative. So many times when we want to do something, we mount up all of these reasons to do it, and we don't look at all of the reasons that maybe we shouldn't do it. It's like a confirmation bias type situation where everything you see just says move, 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 because you want to move. Your heart wants to move. Your head might say, well, maybe we shouldn't, but your heart wants to move, so be careful. So that pretty much wraps up the reasons people leave California and want to live somewhere else. Now we're going to move in and talk about some of the things you really need to be careful about financially as you make this move. So we're talking about moving out of California, but broaden that. You may be watching this and you say, well, I live in Kansas and I'm thinking about moving to Florida, okay? That's valid. That's really a good reason. We just recently have had clients from New York and New Jersey see us on the podcast and stuff. So wherever you are, if you're thinking about moving, you need to be very careful from a financial standpoint as you decide to move somewhere else, that you're looking at all of the aspects of it. Let's talk about one of the things we talked about in the reason that you want to move. Let's delve into that cost of living. There could be a financial cost there as well, because when you move somewhere, for instance, you move from Southern California and you say, well, everything's high here. But you move to Texas, where many times you say, well, they don't have an income tax there, and you stack up the reasons for moving to Texas. I've had people move to Texas and say, you know, my air conditioning bill in the summer, when it got up to an average of 88 or 89 degrees, sometimes hotter, sometimes a little cooler, in July and August, my air conditioning bill was almost non-existent. And you move to Texas and your power might cost you $500, $600, $700, maybe $1,100, maybe $1,200 a month because you're running the air conditioner all the time. There was a person on the radio when I lived in Texas, and he had a joke of a saying, and he said, you know, when it's 98 and you can breathe it or drink it, and he was talking about the temperature being 98 and the humidity being 98, he said, you need an air conditioner. And I'm telling you what, when you need an air conditioner and it's 98, and you're living in one of those popular states in the South where it's humid, I grew up there, so I can speak. I've lived there a lot of my life, so I can speak for those areas. There's sometimes it does you no good to take a shower. You just go outside for a while, come in and towel off, because it's a whole different, you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that different climate. You're going to pay for that humidity in the way of air conditioning. So when you're evaluating cost of living, you've got to evaluate everything. You say, well, the house costs so much less over there. Right. I own rental property in Texas. I can tell you that many times you're paying 2.75 to 3.5% of the value of that house every single year that you get assessed a tax assessment. You're paying sometimes 3.5% of the value of that house in taxes. You say, well, it's lower than California, right? But your house here may be 4 times as much. It's the same as in Kansas. That may be true, but your taxes may be much lower where you are. So when you're doing this cost of living comparison, you've got to consider everything. For instance, we talk about groceries being higher in Southern California and in California where I live. And that's absolutely true. But guess what? California grows a big percentage of fruit, avocados, walnuts, and things like that. And you buy them in California at the grocery store, and you're going to get a really good price on them. You go buy them in Kansas or Texas or Minnesota, where they don't grow very much fruit at all, you're going to pay a much higher price for those items. Now, I'm getting into the minute details here, but I'm just saying, when you're looking at cost of living, you need to really delve into that cost of living and say, what are the differences? It may make an impact on your decision. Let's talk straight up about the tax issue somewhere else. So many people say, I want to move to Tennessee, I want to move to Texas, I want to move to Florida. They have no state income tax in those states. That's great. But I've always said this, because I've actually lived in 2 of those 3 states, and I have family that lives in Tennessee. Here's what I'm saying. Tennessee has roads and bridges, and Texas has schools and libraries, and Florida has an infrastructure that's really, really good. So if the state is paying for things that make that state very livable, they've got to be collecting taxes somewhere. Somewhere along the line, the taxes are coming in. I mentioned in the earlier segment that Texas has a very, very high real estate tax, right? Because they've got to pay for all of that infrastructure and all of the things that the state provides. They've got to pay for it somehow. So they're going to pay for it. Some states will get you in the auto licensing where you buy your tags. Some people will get you there. They'll get you in the state income tax. They'll get you in the state sales tax. They'll get you in all kinds of things. So when you're evaluating taxes, you need to be very careful. When I get my tax assessments on the properties that I own in Texas, I mean, there's city tax, there's maintenance tax, there's trash tax where they charge you on your house for carrying out taxes. There's school tax. There's state government tax. There's every single tax. It's a list about that long, and it's really small type of all the different taxes they get. So they're going to get it somewhere. So you just need to do a comprehensive evaluation, not only of the cost of living, but also of the true tax situation in that new area. If you're going to make a right financial decision when it comes to, do I move from wherever I am now, California, Minnesota, Kansas, wherever you are, do I move from here to another place? Let me make sure I'm comparing apples to apples. The third thing you consider when you're going to move somewhere else, I think it's really important, especially for retirees, that you consider the healthcare situation. And when I say healthcare situation, I'm not just talking about the cost of healthcare, but I'm talking about the quality of healthcare and the availability of healthcare in certain areas. Now, here's what I mean, and this is learning it from people who've moved to all of the popular places. Some of those popular places have a very high quality, and their grade on their health care quality that they provide for their retirees is very, very high. But I have to also tell you that some of those low cost places that people are wanting to move to have the one reason they're low cost is they have a very low quality of health insurance that they provide for people. Then there are other people, and I've read so many studies on this. I mean, 29 years I've been working with retirees and their financial situation. So I've read every study that's like this, catches my attention, and I stop and read it. But not only could a quality of healthcare be really up there, but then you have to consider the accessibility. If I need to get an MRI, do I need to get on a list and I get it 8 months from now, 6 months from now, or do I get it 6 days from now or 6 weeks from now? Because there could be a really big difference. In California even, I recently signed up for an appointment with my doctor for a physical, and it was 4.5 months out in the future. So not only the quality of healthcare that's available to you, but can I get in to see a doctor? All of those things are there. And then, of course, from a financial standpoint, when it comes to healthcare, you need to evaluate the cost, not just of your Medicare supplement or your Medicare Advantage. And the Medicare Advantage is individual to the states that are out there, as well as the Medicare supplement. So you're going to have to change your Medicare plan. You're going to have to pick up a Medicare plan with your new state in almost all cases. There are some national plans, but most of them are state specific. So you've got to evaluate your healthcare situation before you just jump and move and you find out the quality's not there or the quality's there, but I can't get in to see my doctor and the cost is sky high. So you're going to move. You're going to evaluate the cost of living, the taxes, the healthcare, like we just said. You also need to evaluate the housing market. Now, believe it or not, 100% of the people that I have worked with and have ever worked with in 29 years of helping people retire, they've always wanted to live in a house. Now, there's several things involved with housing. And everybody wants to look at just the price of housing. Let's move to Florida. The price of housing has actually gone down. There's some reasons for that in the past couple of years. It's stabilized in the growing areas and has actually gone down a little bit in some of the areas that are not growing. Why? Because not only when you get a house do you have that mortgage, and not only when you get a house, or you say, well, I'm going to pay it off, but you're not going to pay off your house insurance, your home insurance, your homeowner's insurance. That in Florida is up because of all the hurricanes and the damage and the things. Somebody's got to pay for that. And insurance and homeowners insurance is just a way of those companies and the state taking this person's money and this person's money and this person's money all over the state and sharing the coverage and the cost of what happens. So they may have a hurricane down in Southwest Florida like they did a couple of years ago. And it comes through and it just decimates, for instance, Fort Myers Beach. Well, if you're living in Pensacola or you're living in Jacksonville, your homeowner's insurance is going to be impacted by that because that homeowner's insurance company is operating in the entire state. So if they've had a big casualty down here, it's going to impact you. You say, well, that's not fair. Let me ask you a question. How many times has your house caught fire and burned or been damaged completely by a fire? You say, well, never. But yet you cover fire insurance with your homeowner's insurance. You say, yeah, but it's the guy down the street. Yeah, the guy down the street lost everything. Guess what? Everybody on that street helped that person, that couple down the street pay for it through the homeowner's insurance coverage that's across the board. It's a sharing of risk. That's the basic principle of all insurance. So when you go to get that house, you may say, man, look at this. The mortgage is almost nothing. The cost is almost nothing. Right, but what's the homeowner's insurance? What's the tax on that house? How much am I going to be taxed? We talked about that a little bit earlier. But you've got to look at the whole ball of wax. And do you live in a humid environment? Because in a human environment, do you live in an environment where there are windstorms and tornadoes and a lot of hail damage and stuff? It's only going to drive up the total cost of that house. Do you say, well, I've got insurance, right? Back to insurance. It's going to drive up all of those costs. So if you're really going to make a solid decision, and from a financial basis, you've got to consider what will housing really cost us when we get there, in the way of not just the cost of the housing, but the cost of the insurance, the cost of the repairs, the cost of the upkeep. It all goes in to one bottom line financial decision. And here's another thing people, when they're looking at a financial decision and they're going to sell their house here and they're going to move somewhere else, don't forget the moving expenses, okay? And what I mean by that is, when you move, you usually have a house here, and most people want to sell it here so they can get the equity and maybe completely buy a house somewhere else. You say, wow, I won't have any cost anymore. Well, let's think about it. You're going to have to pay a realtor to sell your house here. You're probably going to have a list of demands from the person who buys it, and they say, we want you to fix this and this and this. And I've seen those run sometimes into the $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 range of things you had to fix on your house before you could actually find somebody who would buy it and it pass inspection and then be okay with it. So you've got the realtor cost, the fix-up cost, then you've got to go rent a U-Haul and endanger your own health and back, or you've got to haul and buy a moving van to come in and move you, and they're going to destroy some of your, I'm just saying, there's cost there. I've had people say, the moving people, in their fine print, it wasn't covered, and they destroyed thousands of dollars worth of our furniture in the move. Not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to tell you. And then you're going to go buy a house somewhere else. Well, no realtor in that new place as a welcoming package is going to give you a realtor fee for free. So you're going to buy a house there, and whatever they have in that house, you're going to want to change and fix up something, and you don't like the drapes or the blinds or the window covers, or you don't like the way the lawn is laid out, so you want to go out and put in a barbecue and things like that. All of those things are fine. But many people, when you're in retirement, you're saying, man, the fixed income I'm on here in California is not enough. It's so squeaky that I need to move somewhere else and I'll have all of this margin because my house will be so much less. Well, when you get ready to make a trip and to take a trip, you need to count the cost. Do I have enough money to do all of this, particularly if you're close to being on a fixed income? You say, well, I've got money in my IRA. What I just described in a realtor fee here, fixing up a house here, moving a realtor fee there, fixing up that house the way you want it there, that could run $100,000 to $125,000 without giving away any names. I can show you how that has cost people that much. And if you're minimal on what you've got saved and otherwise from that minimal savings, you're going to go to a fixed income, you better really count the cost of, let's call it the relocation aspect of moving. It's something that many people don't consider. A couple of other things to consider when it comes to the finance. If you move to another state and you've got a trust that's been written in California according to California law and registered in California, you then need to go to an attorney in that new state, and they may need to adjust it if there's a difference in the laws. They may need to modify it a bit. They're going to charge you a little bit for that, probably. I'm sure they will, because they're an attorney and they have to take responsibility for it. But it's just something else to consider, that you may need to adjust your wills and your trust your wills that are in that trust, because you may want somebody else in that area making healthcare decisions and financial decisions for you. You may have had a child here that was your ultimate trustee or executor, successor trustee, and when you move to another state, you may be close to another child. So just some things to consider. You have your house here that's titled into the trust as it should be. Well, you're going to want to take that house out and put the house in the new place into the trust. So those are the kind of things. And then some little bitty things, like you need to make sure and find out what the requirements are. How long do I have to get a new driver's license here? How long do I have before I need to re-tag my cars? I know when I lived in Florida, they would actually drive by your house. So many people were moving in and they just kept out-of-state plates, that now if you go to Florida, there's not a ton of out-of-state plates, because they'll drive by and give you a fine for not getting that plate upgraded to a Florida plate, when after you've moved in for 30 days or 60 days, you need to check wherever you move to find out what that regulation is. But you need to acclimate yourself to the regulations that you've been used to in California. There'll probably be less, but you need to acclimate yourself to the regulations, driver's license, tax licensing. You're going to need to get homeowners insurance in that area. If you don't get it in association with a mortgage that you've had to get, you just buy the house outright, you're going to need to get homeowners insurance on your own. So there's so many of those other little regulatory, insurance, tax type things you need to acclimate yourself to in your new environment. One final consideration. You need to consider your estate tax. What happens when you're no longer here? If you're married, what happens when the two of you are no longer here? Well, different states have drastically different estate tax laws. For instance, all of my friends who do the same thing I do, and they're housed in Massachusetts and New York, tell me that estate tax starts in New York and Massachusetts at $1 million worth of assets. Now you start adding up what you've got, and it doesn't take long to get to $1 million. So you need to make yourself aware, and maybe when you go to upgrade your trust and localize your trust to that new state that you've gone to, you need to ask that attorney it's in his field, it's in her field, it's in the ballpark of trust and wills and estate tax and things like that. Most of them will be able to answer the question, what are the estate tax laws where I'm moving to? What are those? And you probably need to find that out ahead of time. If you've got estate tax at $1 million and it's 5%, it's just 5%, and you move to a state and you've got a total net asset with your house and your valuables and your money in the IRAs and the money in your brokerage accounts and your annuities and everything else you've got, it amounts to $4 million, then your kids are going to have $150,000 worth of estate tax. I'm just giving you, for instance, I don't know what the numbers are. So you've got to make sure you take into consideration before you move, if I move, am I putting my estate that I want to leave in generational wealth to my kids, am I putting that in jeopardy of being taxed? So let's put a wrap on this. A lot of reasons to move out of California, many of them valid. Some of them could have gotchas with them, like if you move somewhere chasing your kids. We talked about what if they move 2 months later, then you're out of luck. You're on your own. It's the yo-yo plan wherever you've moved. And you don't like where you moved, but you're stuck there because you just bought a house there. A lot of reasons to move with some pitfalls. A lot of financial considerations to take into your evaluation. I think before you move, you need to find all of those things out so that you don't go into a rat trap and then you're not able to get yourself out of the rat trap, okay? So how would you go about doing that? Well, I think you need to talk in general to a financial planning financial advisor. In other words, somebody who's saying, I'm not just concerned about what you've got right now and making you money right now. And you don't work with somebody like Blank Investments, because they're, even by their title, only working with you for investments. Work with a wealth management firm. Work with a financial planning firm that really has the focus of the long haul of your retirement. Now, what are you going to do? Well, let me tell you what I do when somebody comes in and says, we're moving to X. Number one, I tell them every single thing I know about the state they're moving to. I tell them all of the things that I've learned. And then I get on the phone and call some of my friends who are advisors in that state. And they know everything about that state because that's their domain. That's where they operate. So you need to get, again, your financial planner can help you. Your wealth management person can help you even before you move to tell you all the things that state is particular to and all the things that to be aware of, all the things for you to investigate. For instance, when I have somebody move to a new state and they're on Medicare, either the supplement or Medicare Advantage, I tell them, if I've got a contact there, I say, call this person, they will help you. If I don't have a contact, I tell them, I say, call somebody who does Medicare, but they're not isolated to one product or one type of Medicare. You need to get that kind of input and that kind of advice. And just like you're looking at housing prices, you're looking at what their income tax, they don't have a state income tax, you need to go deeper. Those are only surface level issues that you're going to run into a lot deeper. So work at a financial advisor, a financial planner, a wealth management person help you. They can give you a lot of those pitfalls, and they can say, what's that landmine over there? What's that landmine over there? I've investigated that landmine. I don't know anything about that one, but here's who you call when you get there or call before you go. And you need to know the path that you're going to take, at least have a plan before you take that very first step. I hope that helps you make sure and look for the pitfalls before you go. If you've been watching this, you know we've talked about the reasons to leave and the financial issues that you could run into. You know, I think this is definitely a show, a video that you might want to watch again, because unless you were stopping and taking notes, all of these things, any one of these things can, and in my experience of 29 years of seeing people move, has been a gotcha. Did I cover them all? No, because the next gotcha I'll learn about next week, okay? But go back through, write all of these things down, and you're going to be smart enough and you're going to be exposed enough to that state where you're thinking about moving that you're going to have your own questions to ask. When you have all of those questions, go to your financial planner, go to your wealth management person and ask them, okay, of all these questions, what do you know? And all these that you don't know, where can I go to find those out? Hey, if you want to talk to us on a one-on-one basis, wherever you live, we can do Zoom, phone, whatever, go to the website. there's a place on there where you can book an appointment with us, and you can request an appointment. We'll call you and make sure that it sets up with the right advisor that we have. Maybe that advisor has some experience in the state that you're thinking about moving to, and we can give you personal information if you want us and our individual help. Secondly, if you like this show, we put a lot into, and many years of experience went into putting this show together. So if you like this show, hit the like button. And if you want to see future shows that we put out, videos that we put out, hit the subscribe button. And if you know somebody who's about to move, send this video to them so that they can watch through it and they can avoid some of the pitfalls that are out there. So until next time, I always tell you, I am Tom Mosley, and if you'll give me just 8, 10, 15 minutes every single week, I'll do my best to increase your financial knowledge.